Alright, welcome back everybody. We are going to do a tomato review on this, and this tomato is a tomato from a seed trade. And so basically what happens a lot of times when I trade seeds with people, I might trade like 5 varieties for five varieties, and sometimes they send you extra seed. Likewise, I do the same. And so I will send them a few extra varieties just out of courtesy. So a lot of times I get these varieties, they're either just not really totally labeled, or they're just like kind of partially labeled. There's like no specific name a lot of the times to these varieties I get. They'll just say cherry tomato or currant tomato or grape tomato or something like that, or purple grape tomatoes, things like that. It's just a general name. So oftentimes I grow them out one year and then I don't really grow them again because they're not a specific name to it where I can grow it out and see, what it's like to grow that variety. I might be able to read about it in the net. I could find pictures of it. But if it's just like cherry tomato, well, I mean, I don't know what that is, So I don't usually fool around with them. But what I got here is a tomato from a seed trade. And again, it just said currant tomato on it, and it didn't say anything else. However, I have grown this tomato in the past, and I regrown it this year because I wanted to remind myself as to why I'm saving the seeds for it. So I grew it again, and it has a really nice, unique flavor. It tastes really good. This doesn't really taste like a pimpinellifolium tomato. It doesn't really taste like a currant tomato. It tastes more like a cherry tomato than a currant tomato. Currant tomatoes have kind of a wild flavor to them. They're a little earthy tone. This actually tastes like a cherry tomato, even though it's a currant tomato. So that's probably why I saved the seeds, and not just toss them. So what I'm doing with this particular variety here is I'm going to offer this under my 25-cent and my 99-cent seed offers. I'm not going to make a full listing for it. It's just going to be a listing under those two, the 25-cent and 99-cent offers, because I don't really have a definitive name for it. However, it is a good tomato to grow. I don't know what it is or anything behind it, so I can't really, offer it as a higher value type of tomato. This is kind of, just something, a backyard variety that somebody hands down kind of a thing. So I figured I would offer it as one of the lower end tomatoes on the 25-cent and 99-cent. So this is what this is going to be specifically listed for. It's not going to be the other types. All right, just want to make sure I'm clear on that, back you out a little bit. And so let's show you what one of these look like. Now these are solid in color, which is strange. And they are solid color. I have to honestly say they really mimic cherry tomatoes a lot. It's like a regular mini cherry tomato is what it is. But it's not. It's actually a pimp. But it's solid in color. You don't see no translucency in this tomato. So that's an interesting feature. There might be a little bit of translucency, but once they fully ripen, they get very dark like what you see there. When they're younger like this, you might see some translucency on some of these that are a little less ripe. I could see it here. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. Like right here, where my thumb is, you could kind of see, if I move it a little, you could kind of see a little bit of translucency. So yeah, these are pimp tomatoes, but they're just, it could have been a cross between a pimp and a cherry. Now, I don't know. But what I can say is that they're delicious little tomatoes. I eat these. I've been eating these when I go out into my garden and pick on tomatoes to snack on. I always go to this plant. This is one of the plants I always go to because there's always tomatoes on it, and I like the taste of the tomato. So I always go there and pick a handful of them, and then I pick a couple of Mexican sour gherkins, which are these things here. I also offer these at hrcs.com. So I'll eat a small handful of those with one of these in the mouthful and chew it up. It's like eating a whole salad. So that's what I like to do. But yeah, let me show you the inside, and then we'll do a. We're not going to weigh it because these don't weigh anything really. There's nothing to weigh here. All right, so that's what it looks like here. Nice little pimp. And believe me when I tell you, when you're picking these things, the best way to pick these tomatoes, this particular variety is a little different. So for example, when I want to remove a tomato from the plant, I just basically go like this. Well, this one's dry. You need to do it on a fresh bract. When they're dry like that, you have to pull them, and then you rip the whole tomato. You got seeds all over you. When they're a fresh bract like this, and you can see the bract is still green, when they're fresh like this, they just pop right off. They make a liar out of me. They pop right off. They usually do. You just bend it at the knuckle, and they come right off like that. Okay? That's generally how these tomatoes are. Most pimps aren't like that. Most pimps, as soon as you touch those things, they blow up in your hands. So they make a huge mess, and they're really hard to eat. You can eat these very easily, just the way I showed you. You have to bend it at the knuckle. Again, I'll show you once more. Here's a tomato here, right? Come on, focus. Okay, so there's a knuckle right here. You see that knuckle? Right in between? You bend it at that knuckle like this. It's making a liar out of me. Made a liar. See how I pulled it? And now it made a mess? It's not doing it on every one. But usually they do. You know, usually you can bend it right at the knuckle and they pop right off like that. That one made a liar out of me, the other one. So, just wanted to show that to you. When you pick them, that's how you got to eat them. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get covered in tomato seeds. Believe me. I grow enough tomatoes to tell you how messy these things can be. And when you want to get a decent satisfactory from it, you're going to eat them. You're going to start bigging around in them, and you're just going to get covered in tomato seeds. Believe me when I tell you, you're not going to intend to do it. You're going to go out with your nice clothes, and you're going to ruin those clothes because you're going to get covered in seeds, and those seeds stick to your clothes, and they don't come off. So it's a pain in the neck to get your clothes clean once you get covered in tomato seeds. All right, so let's go over there and do a bricks. Let me back you out a little bit more. We'll do a bricks over there. So what I'll do is we'll do it to a full one here. Give you an idea of how messy these things are. Now I like eating them. I mean I don't mind it. It's just they're messy, guys. When you eat these, that's why you always see I wear t-shirts, like kind of ripped up t-shirts, because I wear good clothes in there, and I make a mess. And I've ruined a lot of good clothes going into my garden, and it's not like I'm going into my garden, specifically to, get messy. I just wanted to go out and pick 2 tomatoes and make a salad. I end up getting stuff all over me because of what I do. Let me just do that again. See the seeds? See all them seeds coming out of there? It's a mess, guys. Believe me. Okay, it's a 9 on the bricks. Guys, that's very high for currant tomatoes. Usually currant tomatoes generally aren't that sweet, but these tomatoes are very, very sweet. It's a 9 on the bricks, and believe me when I tell you, they are sweet. They are very sweet, like eating candy almost. So let's pop one of these in my mouth, and let's give that a go. Take this one. This one's off the fresh bract. They taste a little different when they're fresh, right off the fresh bract. They taste a little better. Yeah. You see how I picked that one fresh? The stem is still green on it. That tastes different than when the bract's already dead and you're pulling them off of there and they're still firm and good and all. It's just the flavor it just starts to age a little. They're best when they're picked off the green, fresh, still alive bract. That's when they taste the best. And one more. These are addictive, guys. Seriously. Okay. Let's come up with the numbers. I know you guys want to know what those numbers are. Alright, so let's go over those numbers now. And let's start off with the sweetness. Now the sweetness, the bricks meter said the sweetness was a 9 on the bricks. That's pretty high for a currant tomato. And I have to concur with that number because that sweetness was quite high on the bricks. Now average sweetness is usually 25. In this particular case, in this one here, we're going to put this up at about 38 on the sweetness. That sweetness was pretty high and it was very prominent. You could really, really taste that sweetness in that little tiny little tomato. However, it is short-lived, so you get a good sweetness, you get that rush, you can really taste it, and then the tangy part kicks in, and that kind of like it displaces the sweetness a little bit, so you lose it right away. But you can taste it if you look for it. You can really find that sugar spot inside that sweetness area. Now, going over to tangy, tangy was roughly around, it was right around the same thing as the sweetness. They were very close together. I would say probably a little more. I'm going to go 39 on the tangy, but it wasn't overwhelmingly tangy. See, the higher the sweetness is, the higher the tanginess can be without the tanginess being like soury, over nasty, you know. If there's no sweetness and you're even the slightest bit of tanginess that's over it, you can taste it and it starts to really become off-putting. But when you got a lot of sweetness, you're going to want that tanginess to be a little higher or somewhere around the same range as the sweetness. And in this particular case, they were very close, if not right in there. Of course, you could taste the tanginess a little bit above and beyond the sweetness because the sweetness does drop down, but the tanginess, it still carries through from beginning to end, all the way up to the aftertaste. So, yeah, we're going to go a little higher on that one. We'll probably say that was about 39. I'm not sure what I said about the sweetness. I think I said 38. Probably go 37, 38 on the sweetness. It was up there pretty high. This was a little bit higher. I wouldn't go too much higher than 39. That's almost pushing it with the tangy part of it. But basically, the idea I'm trying to give you here is that they were basically right on the money. They were in lockstep with each other. Okay, now tomato flavor. Again, when we talk about tomato flavor, we're talking about how prominent is that flavor in the whole tomato flavor profile, the whole profile of it. How strong was the tomato flavor itself in the whole profile? We're not talking about how good the flavor was or what my opinion of a flavor was. We're talking about how noticeable is that flavor as you eat that tomato. And so with this, the tomato flavor was actually pretty high. We're going to go 7.5 on the tomato flavor out of a scale of 0 to 10. We're going to go 7.5 because that is pretty high. You could pretty much, that rich flavor really lingers around even a long time after you eat it. And for a tomato so small to have such a bold flavor is really interesting. So I definitely have to keep that number on the high side. So I think 7.5 is a good number for that tomato flavor. Now when we get over to the moisture, of course it's a pimp tomato, so the whole inside of the tomato is nothing but moisture. So we always rate pimps a little bit higher than your normal average tomato. So an average tomato for a regular tomato would be 5. You know, your cherry tomatoes, your grape tomatoes, your regular tomatoes, all your slicers and beefsteaks, they all fall into the 5. But when it comes to pimps are always going to range average higher. So if this number was to be for pimps are usually going to range around 7.5, around there. That would be an average for most pimps. I should put that on here as a guideline, so I remember to say that from time to time. But pimps are always going to be moist because that's really all a pimp is nothing but moisture. So if I was to put that on a moisture, I'd say it's probably about the average of a pimp, which would be about 7.5 if you were to put a secondary mark here for pimp and alifoliums. Those are generally going to be that number. So that is about average for that pimp. 7.5 on a moisture. Tardiness, there is a little bit of a tardy tangy a little bit in this there, but I'm going to say that's relatively low. We're going to go say below 1 on the tardy, something there, but it's just very low for you to really. You'd have to eat a real lot of them to really get that tingling feeling behind your jaw, and you'd have to eat a tremendous amount of them to really get a full feel of that tardiness. So we'll just say below 1 and below, somewhere in that range. There was a little something going on, but it was really low. And 5 wouldn't be average, just so you know. I got 5 there. That's not average. Actually, average for tardiness would be about 2 to 1, to be honest with you. I just put the 5 there because that's really a high mark. That a 10 is, you wouldn't even eat a tomato that's a 10. That's like eating a lemon. Okay, so with undertones, there is a little bit of an undertone there. Not much, and it's not that off-putting, but it really tastes more like tomato than it does the undertone. But there is a little something there in some of the tomatoes. Not every tomato, but some tomatoes tend to carry an undertone to it, an earthy type of tone per se. So I will put 1 and or below 1 somewhere in there. There was a little something, but not enough for really to make any kind of a stink about. These tomatoes, out of all currant tomatoes, these currant tomatoes taste the best, to be honest with you, out of most of the ones I grow. Not the best, but pretty good for most of the currants. This one's actually has a very nice flavor with not too much of an undertone. A lot of times these currant wild and currant tomatoes have an earthy, weird type of, awkward flavor sometimes. Not this one. This one's pretty good. It was a little earthy tone, but not enough to be off-putting. Texture, typical for we're just going to say typical pimp tomato. Texture is about the same. There's really no texture on them. It's all seeds and skin, basically. And whatever flesh is in there, it pretty much breaks up. So it's not like you really got a texture really to rate a pimp. But texture, we're just going to go average on texture, which I guess would be 5 for a pimp. Production is very good production. I'm going to go, again, average on production because it's about average of what your normal pimp tomato would produce. So it's pretty much on par with your standard pimp. So production will be average. Skins were a little bit on the thick side. Now, when we're rating skins, 5 would be a skin that basically you didn't even know you ate the skin on it, basically. You ate a tomato and you didn't even know it had skins. That's how smooth the skin was, how well it broke up. A 0 or a 1 would be, basically you had to, no matter how much you chewed it, it was like chewing an apple skin. You couldn't break it up with your teeth. You'd have been there for 20 minutes trying to chew one skin. That would be a low number. This one, however, was a little bit on that side. So it's going to rank a little bit low on the pimp. But the problem with pimps and with all pimps, as soon as you bite it, the whole inside comes out and you're left with nothing but the skin. So I should actually average the skin out for pimps a little differently because skins on pimps, you're always going to have a skin. Skins don't break up with pimps. Not normally. They do break up a little bit, but you're always kind of left with something in your mouth to chew up. And it's always the skin because everything else just turns to liquid. So we'll just say average on the skins. I was going to rank it a little lower because I remember getting a skin. But then again, all pimp tomatoes leave a skin. So we'll just give that an average. As far as seeds, again, that's going to be average for pimps because it just produced the same amount of seeds really as any other pimp tomato. And it's pretty much skin. It's pretty much skin, liquid, and seeds. That's all you got in the pimp. And this is pretty much going to have the same thing as it. So how do I rate this tomato from a 1 to a 10, with 1 being the highest? For a pimp tomato, I would definitely rate this thing at about a 2.5. It's up there pretty high, mainly because the flavor of the tomato is just absolutely delectable. It's got a very rich flavor. I do like this tomato a lot. I just wish it had a name so I knew what I was growing rather than currant tomato or red currant tomato. I wish I had a name, but unfortunately I don't, and because of that reason, it's like, what do I do with it? I'm going to grow millions of these things. I can't even offer seed to it because I don't know what it is. Except for now, what I'm doing now for 25 cents, but I don't make money on that really. I just offer that as a courtesy to my guests in case they want to try something different, throw a couple of small items in the cart that they want to try something different on. So I'll offer it as a courtesy, but realistically, I don't make any money on that. But yeah, I would go with a 2.5 on this tomato. I think it's a pretty high rating. It's definitely a tomato that's interesting to grow. I would definitely recommend growing this tomato, actually. But, like I said, there's no name to it, so you got to be careful how you transfer the seeds to your neighbor and stuff. Just call it currant tomato, because that's what I'm going to call it. And you should be fine. Just don't rename it or anything like that, like I'm not doing. So anyway, guys, that's it. That was your tomato review for the red currant tomato, 25-cent listing. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.